Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inshallah, we will begin with the recitation of the Holy Quran. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Al-Tariq al-Tariq. وما أدراك ما الطارق يوم يكون الناس كالفراش وتكون الجبال كالعهن المنفوش فأما من ثقلت موازينه فهو في عيشة راضية فأما من خفت موازينه فأمه هاوية وما أدراك ما هي نار الحامية.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Inshallah, we'll proceed to the lecture with our respected scholar, Shaykh Mahdi. Please welcome him with the salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة على رسول الله وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه المنتجبين سيما بقية الله في الأرضين عجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, tonight we continue our study of the 31st letter of Nahj al-Balagha, where Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wassalam is admonishing his son and sharing with him life lessons that prepare him for the life that comes ahead, and that serves as a resource of parental advice, fatherly advice for his son, whether his father be alongside him or whether his father departs. And we're learning lessons to pick up in how we can make adjustments to our parenting styles, to our parental regimens, and also to think about perhaps certain things that were not previously on our radars, and they are part of larger projects that we as a family or collectively as a community can begin to brainstorm and think about how we can incorporate these lessons into the lives of our children. So last night we spoke about negotiating speech. So the Imam at one level instructs his son, when you're trying to manage your speech, keep two things in mind. وَدَعِ الْقَوْلَ فِيمَا لَا تَعْرِفْ وَالْخِطَابَ فِيمَا لَمْ تُكَلَّفْ. So the Imam says that, number one, my son, leave off speaking that which we don't know. Not very well informed about something. You're not obligated to have an opinion. You're not obligated to share your thought. And no one is expecting you to know everything. Allah is the true omniscient, and He is knowledge. But all of us are limited beings. We learn things. We have things to learn. We are not perfect. And because of that, there should not be an expectation for us to know everything. So if there's something that we don't know, we should not be embarrassed or ashamed to say that we don't know, whether it's out loud to others, expressing that to other people, or to ourselves, to remind ourselves that I don't know this at all, or as well as I should, in responding to this request or in sharing my opinion. And that's because, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with speaking, and there can be consequences when we speak, and that speech is improper or it's incorrect. It could lead to mistakes that we will be held responsible and have to answer to. And the second thing the Imam says that, and the things that you haven't been charged with, find your place in the world. Again, it's not to say that where you are right now, you have to stay there indefinitely. No. But there are certain things that you are skilled in, and there are certain services and contributions that you can make right now. Find where that is and put those abilities and those skills to good use. And once you do that, then we'll be able to actually begin to construct processes and systems that work efficiently because we're playing to each other's strengths. So when we speak as well, see those things that we are expected to respond to And if we need to become proficient in those, become proficient. And until that point, it's okay for us to kind of take a back seat, observe others, and then enter when the time is right. Okay. Now the Imam moves to the next admonition. And remember, we said because speech is connected to action, the Imam is now giving instructions on kind of approaches to your actions too. Two very important reminders. Number one, the Imam says, وَأَمْسِكْ عَنْ طَرِيقٍ إِذَا خِفْتَ ضَلَالَتَهُ. And refrain from treading a path in life or a certain activity if you fear losing your way on it. If you fear that you will be lost. And then he says, فَإِنَّ الْكَفَّ عِنْدَ حِيرَةِ الضَّلَالِ خَيْرٌ مِّن رُكُوبِ الْأَهْوَالِ. For indeed, halting before you are helplessly lost is better than plunging into a path that is filled with dangers and with terrors. So these are the two instructions here that I want to kind of dissect a little bit today. So the first one, refrain from treading a path if you fear losing your way on it. So the Quran speaks profusely about this. There are certain things that we're encouraged to do. There are certain activities that we're encouraged to partake in. Some of them are very central to the religion. Some of them may be, kind of personal actions. Some of them may be larger collective actions in society. And there are certain things that we're told to stay away from. Like categorically stay away from it because it's not good for you. It's dangerous. So the first thing that we need to do, obviously, is to clarify what path are we going down. So like I said, to kind of stop ourselves from becoming overwhelmed, we can break this out into different levels, the micro and the macro level. So refraining from treading a path that you fear losing your way on it. Let me give you a few examples of what that looks like. This is an issue that has come up and has been of personal interest for me because I think it asks a very central question. Within the early Islamic experience, the movement, we have the hijrah, right? The migration to Medina and the establishment of Medina as the center for Muslim life. Not exclusively, because there were Muslims living in other places. Many of them were through the instruction of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, or by the appointment of the Prophet, and after that, the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, and also, Khulafa. But it was the center, it was a hub. And the Prophet, obviously through divine instruction, worked very hard to establish certain cultures there and certain, institutions that kind of ensured that Muslim life would flourish. So the Quran is kind of filled with these challenges that the Muslim community is going through in trying to build that center. Once the migration happens now, it offers Muslims in all parts of that region or even in the world an opportunity to come and engage in that society, to benefit and to contribute. So the question then became, for Muslims who were previously living in a kind of like a Muslim majority area, or maybe a better way of framing that is, in a locality that Islamic life was truly at the center, and life, society were organized around Muslim ideals. If and when is it permissible for an individual to emigrate to another country? So imagine if you have a center where a vast majority of Muslims are living, and there they are all they've all bought into and they support a Muslim way of life, which makes the construction of Muslim society, you would imagine, theoretically a lot more efficient, because you don't have much competition or conflicting values to have to work with. Which means that not only are you surrounded by other Muslims that think like you and want the same things that you want and act like you, but also even infrastructure like schools are all working towards the development of Muslim students, Muslim children. You have structures of worship, masjids that are on every corner, that they provide the resources that are needed for accessible worship. You have a bazaar, you have a workplace that is operating on Muslim values. You have architecture that resembles kind of the Islamic art and the Islamic approach to city planning and city. So all of those things are there. Now a person wants to not live there or decides to leave. Is that acceptable? So the reason why I'm asking us to think in these terms is because the Imam is saying, refrain from treading a path if you fear losing your way in it. So I would think, I take for granted that if we lived in a Muslim majority locality where people were actually committed to an Islamic way of life, and whatever the governance looked like, people are advancing the Islamic cause. So for the most part, the path that's being tread there is pretty clear. Again, this is independent of any sort of outside influence and pressure and tampering. Just for a second, we're just thinking hypothetically. Now, a person wants to step outside of that and go somewhere else. Do they have the same level of certainty? And do they understand the path that they are treading once they exit that system? This notion has been introduced within our scholarship as the concept of at-ta'arrub ba'd al-hijra, one form of it. And literally it's to return to the ways of the Bedouins pre-Islamic living after the hijrah has occurred. To say it simply, is it permissible to abandon pretty much this way of living that Muslims are living together and advancing shared goals, to go live somewhere else where we can't take that for granted? So here's what the jurors say, and I'm reading from Sayyid Sistani because these questions are asked. I'm gonna share 3 questions, and again, they're touching on this idea of treading a path and knowing where you're going and other areas that you may not know in what direction you're heading. So one question that they asked, and this is in the question and answer section on his site, he says, what is the meaning of ta'arrub ba'd al-hijra, which is one of the major sins? He responds, some jurists have said that during our time, it applies to residing in countries that may cause the loss of faith. It means the migration of a person from a country where it is possible for him to learn the obligatory religious teachings and laws, and where it is possible for him to fulfill his obligations and refrain from what is forbidden, to a country where this possibility does not exist fully or partially. So again, the question is being posed in this way. The dichotomy is that you have a certain society that is conducive to Muslim life, and then you have others that either are not conducive or it's suspicious, it's questionable. What should you do? So that's the first answer. It's migration from a country that you have those resources and it is conducive to a place that it doesn't exist fully or partially. Our next question is now asked. We're living in a society that's filled with conflicting values, and many of them antithetical to Islam. Is this problematic? So the question is this: is it permissible for a person to reside in non-Muslim countries, whatever that means, with all its temptations that confront the person on the street, the school, the television, and other media, while he has the ability to migrate to a Muslim country, although that transfer would cause difficulty in residence, loss of material wealth and comfort, and constrain the worldly aspects of life. If it is not permissible to remain in such a country, would his efforts in propagation amongst the Muslims, reminding them of their obligations and encouraging them to refrain from haram, change the rule for him and allow him to remain in that country? Again, to paraphrase, saying if I'm living in a country which is not promoting Islamic values, and at the same time, I am being bombarded by anti-Islamic cultures and practices, am I obligated to move to a Muslim majority country, even if it causes me difficulty in residence, loss of material wealth, opportunity, comfort, and constraints in the worldly life? And what if I stay here and I propagate the deen? I'm trying to encourage the people to live as better Muslims. Would that change the answer? And the Sayyid's response is, it is not haram to stay in that country if it does not create hurdles for him and his family in fulfilling their religious obligations presently, as well as in the future. Otherwise, it would not be permissible, even if he is engaged in some kind of propagation activities. So that seems to be kind of the central point here that Sayyid Sistani, Hafidhahullah, is drawing our attention to. When the Imam says, refrain from treading a path if you fear losing your way on it, it's this very concept. Now, many of us did not choose from a long list of places to live, and we decided, I'm going to come and live in Denver, Colorado, in the greater kind of Denver area. You know, life circumstances brought us here. Or we didn't decide of a long list of places we're going to come and live in the United States of America. We may have been forced here through, circumstances beyond our control. But there's some level of autonomy and choice. If we've chosen to come here and raise a family here and live here as Muslims and potentially even establish roots for future generations, are we treading a path that we fear losing our way on it? That's what I want us to think about. And then, if the condition is, it is not haram, unless a person has the fear of a decaying religious practice, then the assessment we need to make right now is living in this country, in these circumstances, and when the resources that we have right now, does it satisfy that requirement? This is a very serious issue. Many communities don't want to hear about this because it's a challenge. It challenges us to take seriously what the Imam is saying, what the Quran is saying, and what the Sharia is saying. It's saying you as Muslims are responsible to pursue lifestyles and living circumstances that allow you to not just live as Muslims, but advance and develop yourselves as Muslims in all facets of Islamic life. And a whole nother series of lectures needs to happen, or have happened. I know excellent scholars have come to the center in the past that speak about the competing conceptions of what it means to live religiously in America, in the West. That religion is not just a private affair. But even bracketing all of that, what path are we treading right now? When we get, I personally, in the very, very limited observations that I've had and experiences, that there seems to be a real concern amongst parents who haven't thrown in the towel yet in raising their children to live as practicing Muslims, about how difficult and how concerned they are to be able to do that. Because it's such a challenge, because this adjustment, I think, is much more than most of us anticipated or even expected. Unfortunately, I think some parents have just thrown in the towel with their children. Not only do they fear that they are, or their families are, treading a path that leads to a loss of faith, but they have conceded the fact that they are and have tried a path that has resulted in the loss of faith, and they can't do anything about it. So the trajectory of that generation, the generations after and after and after and after, is not heading in a good place. Imam says, be careful. Make a change. And the make a change is not just get up and leave. Remember, the condition was living somewhere that allows you to practice as Muslim fully, and that is not destructive or harmful to your faith and the development of your faith. So that's kind of the first part of what Imam's saying. And I really hope this can become the topic of serious conversation and of thought. What are those things that we need kind of in our locality? And then some of the things that we need at, say, national levels that ensures that we can continue to live as Muslims and also work towards providing the needs for future generations, younger generations, for them to be able to live as Muslims. Because if in our day it was just simply the ability to build a masjid and occupy it, right now for our children, their struggles may be different from just the, identification as Muslim. There may be problems that are much more complex, or at least they are personalized, that require us to problem solve for them to be able to, successfully live as Muslims. So this requires some real study, some research. Very little of it have I seen done. That means structured research. Fund the projects, get people who can actually conduct the surveys, to collect the data, to analyze the data, and to present some findings. This is the state of, for example, the young Muslim population living in this country. These are their concerns, these are their problems, and then begin to brainstorm potential solutions. And then from them, choose one and then start working on it. Ignoring it, I think, doesn't help anyone, which is a perfect segue into the second part of this statement. And the Imam says, he says, not only refrain from treading a path if you fear losing your way on it, but also, he says, for halting before you are helplessly lost is better than plunging into a path filled with terror. Sometimes you're not fully confident in where you're going. There's always some level of uncertainty, granted. But sometimes you really are not that sure. If someone asks you, where are you going and how do you get there, you wouldn't be able to say. If you're going on a trip, you should have a clear destination, and you should have a pretty good understanding of, the route that you're going to take. Even if you don't know all the particulars, you'll figure it out on the way or through assistance. But if you have no idea of where you're going and you have no idea how you're going to get there, then you're lost. So we start certain projects, we may have some rough idea, fine. But if we advance to a certain point where we have completely lost the point, we've lost sight of the bigger picture, or we don't know what we're doing, but we're afraid to ask, that's a problem. I'm saying stop there before you dig yourself deeper and deeper and deeper into that hole. Which gets us into a few very interesting psychological phenomena. One is how to accept help from other people. And the second is denial. Denial is a defense mechanism. For the most part, it describes when a person is unable or unwilling to face certain realities, to admit an obvious truth. There can be different reasons for that. But the fact of the matter is that, with the exception of some cases, denial is unhelpful as a response to a problem. So, in kind of thinking about how to move past some of these restrictions, number one, first of all, stop thinking that accepting help is a sign of weakness. It's a problem that I think many of us have, I myself included, because I think it stems from a flawed type of thinking. Either it's pride, or it's because I think that I have to be perfect. And for me to accept help from another person is to acknowledge that I'm not perfect, that I have imperfections. And it means that I have to be vulnerable, and I don't like that, and I don't want that, because I think that it's shameful, so I don't do it. That's a problem. So accepting help from other people is a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness. Because if you accept help from other people, you're showing that you're open to progress and that you are a work in progress. And the second one is that denial. Denial is not helpful either. Denial is convenient because it gets us to think that everything's okay and that we don't have to make a fundamental change to the way that we look at the world or act in the world. But to overcome that, we have to start thinking about some of these uncomfortable ideas and being honest. Being honest and examining what it is exactly that we fear. Thinking about the negative consequences of failing to take action. If things are bad today, what are they going to look like tomorrow? And then working with one another, or people at least that we trust, that helps us move, kind of identify and move past these irrational beliefs. So in this larger project of, living as Muslims and raising Muslim families, I think it's healthy for us from time to time, and seriously now, to kind of take a pause and spend time to just assess where we are and what we're doing. Are we digging ourselves in a deeper hole? What are we, in what stage are we in trying to resolve some of the needs that we have for our families in living as Muslims in this country? And then if we are not being productive, if we are moving towards something that is just continuously drawing resources from us, or even our sense of hope and optimism, and is not producing anything, it may be time to shift gears or cut our losses or solicit help. So I focused more on kind of that collective element here. There are personal facets too, and I'll give a quick example of a personal facet. So in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, don't go near certain things. وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا. Don't even go near something like that. This is especially important for younger people. We have certain, it's for everyone, but for younger people, sometimes it's intensified. We have certain temptations, desires, right? We're drawn towards certain things. Some of them are satanic temptations. Some of them are natural needs that we have that may not be correctly addressed or satisfied. So we're drawn to certain things. Quran says, don't even go near it. It's better for you to stop yourself before you go to the point of no return. It's important to kind of add this qualification here that there's never a point of no return. The door of tawbah, repentance, and return is always open. But that action, if you follow through and it comes to fruition, that will happen. There's no way you can take the fact that it happened back. And you have to work with kind of like the consequences of that action. You can still do tawbah and return and all that. It doesn't change the fact that that thing will happen. So thinking about how younger people are being enticed into engaging in all sorts of activities that are really dangerous. Development of bad habits, to associate with people that don't have their best interests in mind, the construction of social circles, friends, peers that are only there to kind of support their worldly, their material, their kind of lower self, their animalistic desires. There needs to be something in place, either a system Or there needs to be, in addition to a system, the development of a personal strength to be able to stop a person before it's too late. You're spending time with a group of friends that you're not supposed to be. Others have told you, maybe you know, or maybe you're oblivious. But now that same group wants to encourage you to do something that you know is categorically problematic. They're inviting you to consume alcohol, to consume illegal, unethical substances. Legality is not the determinant of what is Islamically acceptable or not. To engage in an illicit relationship, to listen or to watch or say things that are not morally upright. There has to be a point where you can stop yourself and say, I'm uncomfortable with this, I don't want to do it. Teaching our children to have that self-confidence in the face of pressure to express themselves and say, this is not something that I want to do, and I'm not just going to go along and do it because others are doing it or are telling me or are encouraging me. That's not something that comes naturally to most people. That's a seed that needs to be planted and needs to be nurtured. There's so many studies that show the effect of groupthink, how majority action can influence kind of like the rationality of a minority to follow suit without them fully understanding or even wanting to. So our society is full of those kind of things. And our children adopt them not because they understand the value of it, and because of that they consume it. It's because that's what everyone else is doing. And their rationality then is formed by this type of behavior. So at both levels, having some sort of protocols and systems that lends assistance to people in vulnerable situations, brings that to their attention. You're kind of walking on thin ice. You're playing with fire here. Be careful. And then personally, the person has to have that inner wa'id, as we spoke about maw'idah the other night. There has to be an inner admonition that says, you know, this is not for you. This is not good. Walk away. There's so many young people that are, again, they may be young at heart or they may have been the youth of yesterday, but they're struggling with a weight of one or a series of actions that they regret deeply now. And they just can't move past it. They can't learn to forgive themselves, or others cannot come to forgive them for those mistakes. And it completely, rules their life and their sense of guilt and their sense of shame and their sense of regret and their sense of distance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Their sense of not being ostracized, but they self kind of ostracized. They don't want to associate with religious communities anymore because they feel that sense of they don't belong because they've done something that is shameful. I know I've been all over the place tonight because there's really so much to say about these two things, and I just want to at least capture what are the different things that the Imam is drawing our attention to, and I'm doing a poor job at it, so forgive me, but hopefully just the very fact that we're engaging with this has brought ideas to your minds, and we can share that with one another. For us not to tread paths that we fear losing our way in, and also to halt before we're helplessly lost. I always remember the example of the son of Nuh alayhi salam. He warned him for so long that, listen, this is a divine promise. Flood is going to come. Come with us, support us, and, kind of board the ark one time. His son was completely, dismissive. Then when the flood did come, he still had an opportunity. And Nuh alayhi salam extended that to him. And he still rejected it. That's the point where his son should have cut his losses and said, you know what? I made a poor choice. I've been afforded an opportunity to come back. I should take it. But whatever it was pride, it was his shame, it was his embarrassment, whatever it was, he decided, no, I'm just going to stay up here and I should be safe. And he wasn't. So we don't want that to happen. We don't want, first of all, we don't want our children to make those kind of choices to begin with. And if they do, we want to make sure we don't just leave them, God forbid, to drown, but we offer them an opportunity, and hopefully within them, there's something that's there that is able to process when they need to kind of realize that this is not a path that's worth living, and they should kind of make a change. So we'll stop there. I apologize again tonight. We only went through one section. Maybe I'll try to pick up the pace, not because the contents after is less important, because it's not, or it's less complex because it's not, but to maybe cover a little bit more ground. So there's some things that maybe speak to certain people and certain things to others. So I'll try to pick up the pace, inshallah, from tomorrow night, and we'll see, inshallah, where Allah takes us. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by the right of this night and by the right of this letter, that we, inshallah, He inspires our minds and our hearts to hear it truly and to process it, and inshallah to act upon it. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us, to protect our children, to protect our families, to provide for us living circumstances that are conducive to a practice of Islam that is pleasing to Him, inshallah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to return the hope in our hearts, the optimism within us to live as Muslims in any part of the world in ways that are pleasing to Him, and that we may raise families, inshallah, that though there will be struggles and ups and downs, we can look back and be appreciative and thankful for the progress that we've made, inshallah. Walhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
اللهم إني أفتتح الثناء بحمدك وأنت مسدد للصواب بمنك، وأيقنت أنك أنت أرحم الراحمين في موضع العفو والرحمة، وأشد المعاقبين في موضع النكال والنقمة، وأعظم المتجبرين في موضع الكبرياء والعظمة. اللهم أذنت لي في دعائك ومسألتك، فاسمع يا سميع مدحتي، وأجب يا رحيم دعوتي، وأقل يا غفور عثرتي. فكم يا إلهي من كربة قد فرجتها، وهموم قد كشفتها، وعثرة قد أقلتها، ورحمة قد نشرتها، وحلقة بلاء قد فككتها. الحمد لله الذي لم يتخذ صاحبة ولا ولدا، ولم يكن له شريك في الملك، ولم يكن له ولي من الذل، وكبره تكبيرا. الحمد لله بجميع محامده كلها، على جميع نعمه كلها، الحمد لله الذي لا مضاد له في ملكه ولا منازع له في أمره. الحمد لله الذي لا شريك له في خلقه ولا شبيه له في عظمته. الحمد لله الفاشي في الخلق أمره وحمده، الظاهر بالكرم مجده، الباسط بالجود يده، الذي لا تنقص خزائنه ولا تزيده كثرة العطاء إلا جودا وكرما، إنه هو العزيز الوهاب. اللهم إني أسألك قليلا من كثير مع حاجة بي إليه عظيما، وغناك عنه قديم، وهو عندي كثير، وهو عليك سهل يسير. اللهم إن عفوك عن ذنبي وتجاوزك عن خطيئتي وصفحك عن ظلمي وسترك على قبيح عملي وحلمك عن كثير جرمي عندما كان من خطئي وعمدي، أطمعني في أن أسألك ما لا أستوجبه منك، الذي رزقتني من رحمتك وأريتني من قدرتك وعرفتني من إجابتك، فصرت أدعوك آمنا وأسألك مستأنسا، لا خائفا ولا وجلا، مدلا عليك فيما قصدت فيه إليك. فإن أبطأ عني عتبت بجهلي عليك، ولعل الذي أبطأ عني هو خير لي لعلمك بعاقبة الأمور. فلم أر مولا كريما أصبر على عبد لئيم منك علي يا رب. إنك تدعوني فأولي عنك، وتتحبب إلي فأتبغض إليك، وتتودد إلي فلا أقبل منك، كأن لي التطول عليك، فلم يمنعك ذلك من الرحمة لي والإحسان إلي والتفضل علي بجودك وكرمك. فارحم عبدك الجاهل وجد عليه بفضل إحسانك، إنك جواد كريم. الحمد لله مالك الملك مجري الفلك مسخر الرياح فالق الإصباح ديان الدين رب العالمين. الحمد لله على حلمه بعد علمه، والحمد لله على عفوه بعد قدرته، والحمد لله على طول أناته في غضبه، وهو قادر على ما يريد. الحمد لله خالق الخلق باسط الرزق فالق الإصباح ذي الجلال والإكرام والفضل والإنعام. الذي بعد فلا يرى وقرب فشهد النجوى تبارك وتعالى. الحمد لله الذي ليس له منازع يعادله ولا شبيه يشاكله ولا ظهير يعاضده. قهر بعزته الأعزاء وتواضع لعظمته العظماء فبلغ بقدرته ما يشاء. الحمد لله الذي يجيبني حين أناديه ويستر علي كل عورة وأنا أعصيه ويعظم النعمة علي فلا أجازي. فكم من موهبة هنيئة قد أعطاني وعظيمة مخوفة قد كفاني وبهجة مونقة قد أراني. فأثني عليه حامدا وأذكره مسبحا. الحمد لله الذي لا يهتك حجابه ولا يغلق بابه ولا يرد سائله ولا يخيب آمله. الحمد لله الذي يؤمن الخائفين وينجي الصالحين ويرفع المستضعفين ويضع المستكبرين ويهلك ملوكا ويستخلف آخرين. والحمد لله قاصم الجبارين مبير الظالمين مدرك الهاربين نكال الظالمين صريخ المستصرخين موضع حاجات الطالبين معتمد المؤمنين. الحمد لله الذي من خشيته ترعد السماء وسكانها وترجف الأرض وعمارها وتموج البحار ومن يسبح في غمراتها. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. الحمد لله الذي يخلق ولم يخلق ويرزق ولا يرزق ويطعم ولا يطعم ويميت الأحياء ويحيي الموتى وهو حي لا يموت بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير. اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وأمينك وصفيك وحبيبك وخيرتك من خلقك وحافظ سرك ومبلغ رسالاتك أفضل وأحسن وأجمل وأكمل وأزكى وأنمى وأطيب وأطهر وأسنى وأكثر ما صليت وباركت وترحمت وتحننت وسلمت على أحد من عبادك وأنبيائك ورسلك وصفوتك وأهل الكرامة عليك من خلقك. اللهم وصل على علي أمير المؤمنين ووصي رسول رب العالمين عبدك ووليك وأخي رسولك وحجتك على خلقك وآيتك الكبرى والنبأ العظيم. وصل على الصديقة الطاهرة فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين. وصل على صبطي الرحمة وإمامي الهدى الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة. وصل على أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي حججك على عبادك وأمنائك في بلادك صلاة كثيرة دائمة. اللهم وصل على ولي أمرك القائم المؤمل والعدل المنتظر وحفه بملائكتك المقربين وأيده بروح القدس يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجعله الداعي إلى كتابك والقائم بدينك استخلفه في الأرض كما استخلفت الذين من قبله. مكن له دينه الذي ارتضيته له أبدله من بعد خوفه أمنا يعبدك لا يشرك بك شيئا. اللهم أعزه وأعزز به وانصره وانتصر به وانصره نصرا عزيزا وافتح له فتحا يسيرا واجعل له من لدنك سلطانا نصيرا. اللهم أظهر به دينك وسنة نبيك حتى لا يستخفي بشيء من الحق مخافة أحد من الخلق. اللهم إنا نرغب إليك في دولة كريمة تعز بها الإسلام وأهله وتذل بها النفاق وأهله وتجعلنا فيها من الدعاة إلى طاعتك والقادة إلى سبيلك وترزقنا بها كرامة الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم ما عرفتنا من الحق فحملناه وما قصرنا عنه فبلغناه. اللهم المم به شعثنا واشعب به صدعنا وارتق به فتقنا وكثر به قلتنا وأعزز به ذلتنا وأغن به عائلنا واقض به عن مغرمنا واجبر به فقرنا وسد به خلتنا ويسر به عسرنا وبيض به وجوهنا وفك به أسرنا وأنجح به طلبتنا وأنجز به مواعيدنا واستجب به دعوتنا وأعطنا به سؤلنا وبلغنا به من الدنيا والآخرة آمالنا وأعطنا به فوق رغبتنا يا خير المسؤولين وأوسع المعطين. اشف به صدورنا وأذهب به غيظ قلوبنا، واهدنا به لما اختلف فيه من الحق بإذنك، إنك تهدي من تشاء إلى صراط مستقيم. وانصرنا به على عدوك وعدونا إله الحق، آمين. اللهم إنا نشكو إليك فقد نبينا، صلواتك عليه وآله، وغيبة ولينا، وكثرة عدونا، وقلة عددنا، وشدة الفتن بنا، وتظاهر الزمان علينا. فصل على محمد وآله، وأعنا على ذلك بفتح منك تعجله، وبضر تكشفه، ونصر تعزه، وسلطان حق تظهره، ورحمة منك تجللناها، وعافية منك تلبسناها برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. صل على محمد وآله.